along with the promises made by God in the Old Testament to send his Messiah, his anointed king, what we focused on the first week of Advent, and along with the faithful waiting of God's people for that promised Savior, which is week 2 that we looked at in Advent, there are these stories in the Old Testament that are pictures for us of God's great and steadfast love for his people. And that's what we're going to be looking at this week, is God's love for us as seen in his word. But to kick it off, I want to start with one of those Old Testament pictures of God's love, and that's the story of the book of Ruth. To summarize the book quickly, if you're not familiar with it or you've forgotten it, the book of Ruth is a story that centers around the difficulties of a woman named Naomi. Naomi was a woman who lived among God's people. She had a husband and she had 2 sons. But then a famine came and it forced them out of God's land to live in a foreign land in order to find food. While they lived in that foreign land, both of her sons married foreign women. That's who was around, so that just makes sense. And they lived as foreigners in a foreign land. But then disaster strikes, and Naomi loses her husband and both of her sons. So here's Naomi. She is living as a poor, really in a situation of poverty and destitution. And it's really a shameful situation in the ancient world for a woman to not have any children. And so here she is. She's in a foreign land, living with 2 foreign daughters-in-laws. And her only option, really, is to send her daughters-in-laws away to go marry other men and to return back to her homeland. And so that's what she does. She tells them, get out of here, go find a new husband, I'm going to return to my people. But one of her daughter-in-laws won't do it. She won't go. And her name is Ruth. And that's who the book is named after. And then Ruth loves Naomi with a kind of self-sacrificial, with a kind of intense, with a kind of steadfast sort of love that is a picture of God's love for us. When Naomi tries to send her away, here's how Ruth responds. She says, do not urge me to leave you or to return from following you. For where you go, I will go, and where you lodge, I will lodge. Your people shall be my people, and your God my God. Where you die, I will die, and there I will be buried. May the Lord do so to me and more also, if anything but death parts me from you. That's love. That is steadfast love. That's the kind of love that God has for his people. So Naomi returns to her homeland with her daughter-in-law Ruth, and they have nothing. So Ruth starts gleaning barley. And gleaning means she walks behind the harvesters as they're harvesting the barley, and whatever they drop, whatever they forget, whatever they pass over, she picks it up. And this was allowed in the law and the custom of God's people. And so she's working hard in the hot sun all day long by herself to support her mother-in-law out of her love for her mother-in-law. But in God's providence and in his plan, that's not the end of the story. The field she's working in belongs to a man named Boaz. And Boaz sees her and notices her and loves her. And he takes special care of her. He protects her. He watches over her. And he even provides her with extra food. And so when Ruth goes back to home, back to Naomi, and tells Naomi about Boaz, Naomi gets excited. Why? Because Boaz is a relative of Naomi's. And this is excellent news. Why? Because there were laws in the Old Testament, you can read them, but there were laws among the ancient Israelites that you could marry the wife of a deceased relative who died before they were able to have children. And this was, and the first child born in that new union would be among the line of the deceased relatives. So this was a way to continue the family line even when all the men had died out. It was a way to keep land ownership where it should be and keep family lines going. And so Naomi thinks, this is the opportunity to continue my family line. This is the opportunity to get rid of my shame of not having any descendants. And you'll see why this is so important at the end of the story. And so she wants to play matchmaker. She wants Ruth to marry Boaz. But think about it. Would Boaz really take Ruth to be his wife? Would Boaz, who was likely an older, wealthy landowner, really marry Ruth and all the baggage that comes with marrying Ruth? She's poor. She's got nothing. She's a widow. She's already been married. She's a foreigner. She's not even from that nation. She's not even born among God's people. And she comes with a Naomi. You know, they're a 2-for-1 deal, because she told Naomi, where you die, I will die. Where you go, I will go. And so you don't get Ruth without getting Naomi. So by all earthly measures, by all earthly logic, Ruth was not worthy of Boaz's love. But Boaz loved her anyway. And Boaz married her. And the Bible uses the language of redemption when he marries her. He redeems her because of his love for her. And that's an incredible picture of Jesus' love for us. Why? Well, because by all earthly standards, he shouldn't love us. He shouldn't even notice us. And yet he does. He sees us and he loves us and he notices us and he has come for us. He made himself one of us in order to redeem us, like Boaz redeemed Ruth. But again, in God's providence and in his plan, the story doesn't stop there. He married her, and they have a child named Obed. And Obed, according to the book of Ruth, would be the great-grandfather of King David. And it's in the line of King David that all the promises of the Messiah were packed into this line. It was always said that the Messiah would come in the line of King David. The ultimate king would come in the line of this great king in Israel's history. And so this love story, this amazing love story that gives us a picture of God's love for us, is actually part of an even greater and even larger plan of God, an even bigger love story of God ensuring that his promises will come true, of God protecting the line of the Messiah, of God ensuring that Jesus would be born just like he promised he would be born. That's love. That's steadfast love. That's the kind of the love that God has for his people. And so let's spend this week together focusing on the great love shown to us at Christmas.